All right, I am here with our niche power panel. I got Michael Jans, Paul Hohlbein, Russ Castle, and then me, your host, Abe Bowling. Appreciate all you guys being here today. I am so excited. I've been talking about this episode to everybody because I think this is the most excited I've been for an episode of the value that will be brought. We always try and bring value to the audience that listens to our show, but this is a power pack punch show. If you listen to everything that will be said throughout the course of this episode, I promise you that it will change the course of your agency. It will change the course of your life, and it obviously change the course of your finances in the process. Going back to when I first started in insurance, I'm the youngest insurance guy here, I think. But no? Oh, Michael, maybe you're a little younger. So I got my history goes back, and I want to say this was like probably 2007 or something like that. Is I was at a networking meeting. I had just gotten into insurance. I was at a networking meeting, and there was this guy there that was 85, maybe, I don't know. He was this old insurance agent, and he heard that I had just gotten licensed, and he goes, "The secret to success in the insurance business is you have to be able to do everything. You never want to turn away a client. You want to be able to write whatever they've got, their health, their home, their auto, their life." And at the time I was like, oh boy, I got a lot of work to do, right? I've got more insurance licenses to get because I was life, health, disability, but I didn't have my P&C. And I've got those appointments to get, and I've got all this stuff to do in order for me to be successful. And what I found out over the next, 5 years of my career is, even though he was a really, really nice guy, that may have been true in 1950 when he started selling insurance, or whenever it was, but it's not at all true today. And in fact, the opposite is true. I think that, if you spread yourself too thin, what you're going to find is that you're running around in all sorts of different directions. You're what do they call it? Jack of all trades, master of none. And so we've assembled this power panel, which I'm so excited. We've got experts that span the industry here. We got Michael Jans, he's a coach, been talking about niche insurance for decades. We got Paul Hohlbein, BTIS. You guys are a power niche player. You pretty much exclusively write contractors. You got a couple other things, but contractors is the name of your game. And we got Russ Castle, who specializes in habitational, and each of you has gone to the absolute top of your respective careers in your respective fields with your respective businesses. So I want to start the conversation today, and maybe we can just kind of go the direction of the panel here. We can start with Michael and then circle around. Why niche? I mean, so Michael, you have been preaching essentially niche for a long, long time. Why?
Got it. All right. Well, first of all, I'm feeling no pressure here with your introduction, and that you said we're not just going to change businesses, we're going to change lives.
That's right.
So maybe I should shut up and get out of the way. All right. I will. I'm happy to talk about niches, and I'm going to try to let me just introduce a few basic principles, and then I will get out of the way. In reference to your friend who you spoke with, the older gentleman, to some extent back in the day, insurance was really strongly geography based. And so typically an agency would have an agency, and it would have a location, it would be kind of like a store. And a lot of agents, they knew their community. And to some extent, they were almost like private sector mayors, that they knew people, they connected people. And so there was, to some extent, that it was, this economy was growing, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, recessions aside, this was the fastest growing economy in the history of the world. So, to some extent, if you were able to establish a beachhead in a neighborhood or a community, you could effectively serve most or a lot of the needs that took place in that area. That being said, one, geography is no longer a limitation. the ability to expand your footprint, like Russ, for example. When I was working with Russ a long time ago, I think there was some natural footprint that surrounded his proximity to his office, but now it's all of California. And so when you remove that demand to be, only local, then you can begin to ask yourself, well, strategically, what should I do? Well, when you look at strategy, you want to answer the strategic questions first. If you want to scale, then it's not like, oh gosh, what digital marketing thing should I do, or what email, or what campaign, or how does my landing page look? All those tactical issues, yeah, they matter a lot. But they ideally they should be guided. They should be aligned around a singular strategic imperative that the business adopts. And typically, when strategists look at scaling, the first question is, where are we going to play? It's who's going to be our customer, and as in this industry, one of the beauties of this industry is we have a lot of selection over who's going to be our customer. Unfortunately, the vast majority of agencies either don't ask or answer that question, or they do it kind of vaguely. We're pretty good at this, or we're pretty good at this, and they don't really do it strategically and deliberately and intentionally. Well, that decision, who's our customer, is something that you're going to be living with for years and years to come. It's going to guide, so you're going to be executing tactics all along the way. And so the real question is, if you're going to go through that work of executing tactics, are they high leverage or low leverage? Well, that all goes back to that early decision. Who's our customer? Are they well suited to the independent agency channel? Are they well suited to our agency? And so the advantage of niche is it's really twofold: external effectiveness and internal efficiency. And so the external effectiveness allows us to multiply infinitely the scaling of our messaging. And so we can reach out to a marketplace and attract them to us with original content, or attract them to us with thought leadership, or attract them to us with lead magnets. And then we can draw them into some kind of a funnel that nurtures those relationships. And so, boom, when they're ready, if we've designed a relatively simple funnel and we've done it effectively, then we got leads that are coming to us and they're calling us, and they don't just want insurance. They don't just want a free quote. They want us. So the opportunity to expand the messaging is unleashed. That's the external effectiveness. The internal efficiency, I think maybe before we hit the record button, Russ was talking about revenue per employee. Well, if you got a factory inside, and the purpose of the factory is to create a policyholder, and then ultimately to create a raving fan policyholder. Well, if that factory is doing the same thing over and over and over again, it can become highly efficient. And so, if we're turning, let's say, contractor or habitational leads into customers, and we're doing it over and over again, we can do it with expertise. We can do it understanding their language. We can do it understanding the issues and the problems that they face, and we can solve them. On the other hand, going back to your friend, doing everything for everybody, sure, that's a very inefficient internal factory, and we see it in reduced margins. We see it in reduced revenue per employee. So the strategic argument for niches is very, very strong. Yeah. The argument against it potentially is lack of diversification, and then there are ways to deal with that. And you've been in the contractor niche, right, Abe? Yep. Yeah, like there's some niches that are just like insurance. There's some niches that have hard markets and soft markets, and so we want to be smart enough to be prepared for those, either with some diversification or some recognition that there are going to be income swings.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, so for us, I always told everybody when we had our contractors insurance agency that we were a contractors resource house. And oh, by the way, we sell insurance. And really that was, that was the key right there. And, yeah, you target different types of companies within to prepare for those swings. And, because when the market goes, I mean, there's different people in the industry and getting to know that industry too, right? Because it's like, otherwise you're like, well, yeah, I got business clients. Well, what's going to happen in a recession? Like, do statistically speaking, which ones, go under, which ones don't, which ones grow, which ones are, kind of the up and coming in that market. And so, just by, working with them over time, you gain more and more knowledge. Russ, what made you choose to, and then we'll head over and talk to Paul. What made you choose to go niche besides Michael? For those of you that don't know, Michael and Russ go way back. Right. If you listen to the episode with Russ a few episodes back, he won a car from Michael. Michael, if you got any other cars, I'll take one.
I'm out of cars.
You out of cars?
I'm out of cars.
It comes back to trying to make, we're all in business to provide a lifestyle, right. Ultimately an income. And to me, I saw the writing on the wall from Michael and others years ago that, to do a niche, it's the most efficient. Now, to find the right niche took some time. I mean, my habitational niche is not my first niche. I sub-niched within it, but the key is getting into something, one, you have an affinity for, you have access to, and that there is enough revenue per client to be able to make it worthwhile. One of my very first niches, I'm going to date myself, that was the 1 hour photo stores before digital printing or digital pictures. Those were a small policy that didn't make a whole lot of money. Well, okay, you're not going to make a ton of money doing that. You've got to make sure that your client is substantial enough to be able as you do each one, you're making a profit. And then also, is the niche one you have an affinity for, and are there enough people in it? Some people I know do niches of a few hundred. Well, there's big bucks in those small lists. In habitational in California, you can imagine there's 250,000 apartment owners. So there's tons of possibilities. And then sub-niching within that, it's like sharpening a pencil. I can't be everything to everybody in habitational, nor do I try. And I think that's with other niches is you've got to figure where your sweet spot is. I know a buddy of mine did restaurants. Well, he found out the most fine point of that pencil, so to speak, of sharpening was a delivery for pizzerias. He started as restaurants, did white linen, did this, and got down to it. I know another guy that's in cannabis. Same thing. Did everything from manufacturing to retail. Now he's doing delivery. So depending on once you get in it and start working just in that space, how can you be as efficient as possible and get as narrowly focused as possible? So that's key.
Perfect. Paul, what made BT, because you guys have all builders and tradesmen insurance services. The niche is in the name, right? Well, I guess you guys are just BTIS now, right?
Yeah, I mean, our technical name, builders and tradesmen, and we took the acronym for reasons of not being kind of pigeonholed into a specific niche.
Sure.
But the niche theme for us, it really started with the family. My dad had been a company, corporate insurance executive, and he had done, a lot of prior business in the construction space. And really what we wanted to do was revolutionize, or change the paradigm in the niche. And that was by using, kind of a phrase from Sam Walton, the just-in-time delivery model. And what it meant was we wanted to come up with a product that we could put online where the retail agent out there could access us. And as Michael talked about external effectiveness and internal efficiency, what we really wanted to do is give a tool that they could come in and quickly discern, are we competitive and in the hunt? And if they liked what they saw, they could then finish the process of submitting and getting binding approval from us. The other thing that, really spun us to, kind of this niche is, the carriers, they go through these cycles, I would say, of we're going to use MGAs or we're not going to use MGAs or program administrators. And really what we found is during the cycles, we can do the job better than a carrier because we have that expertise, we have the efficiencies, we have the technology. So it allows them, and we're seeing articles all over about the opportunities in, call it the program business space. And it's not just construction anymore. I heard something about cannabis. I mean, cannabis is the newest, latest, greatest thing that, people want to jump into, and there's going to be tremendous opportunities in that niche space. So, when you kind of wrap it all together, it's the carrier needed niche operators to, better process the business, to have, call it an underwriting box so that you have consistent underwriting and consistent results. For the retail agent, the niche allowed them that if they wanted to come to some place that really understood construction in our size and our space, they could come do that. Yeah. And then, having the technology wrapped around all that allowed for this experience. And then also with the technology, it provided this, effectiveness, and, it allowed for margins to be, call it stretched, so that there were better margins on the business because you were more efficient. So kind of wrapped up what everyone has already said. And then, we were fortunate. We were at the right place at the right time. 2001, right after that, we moved into a hard market. Capacity was lower. We had the online platform. We had a carrier that had plenty of capacity. We were able to go out and take advantage of the opportunities. And then, since 2001, all we've done is work to continue to enhance, provide better experiences, provide better technology, and, stable, carrier partners in our space. And, let these agents, I heard, make a living or, a lifestyle. We're there to help them accomplish their dreams, to live lifestyles and do the things that they want to do. And then most importantly, I think we should all have a little bit of fun doing that. I do want to, I love the idea of Michael giving away a car. Stuff like that sounds always exciting too. And, different in the space, and, us doing things like that throughout our, 20 plus years being in business is, not only being a niche player, but also looking different in the space. I think that's very important too.
Yeah. Well, I know. So my history in the niche space is I was actually working for a captive agent, and I was hired on as a commercial insurance producer, and with, no niche at all. They were just like, here's our appetite guide, go get them, Tiger. And so I made a billion cold calls, phone calls, and tried to set appointments. And what I found for me was that contractors were people I got along with. I mean, I'd walk into different spaces. It's probably, I grew up in a blue collar community. Everybody that I knew had a blue collar job. And so, my people, right. And so, when I'd go out and talk with these contractors, we hit it off. I got along with them. And then over the course of some time, a few years, the ownership of the agency that I worked for changed, and underwriting within that company also changed. And so there was a lot of things going on, and I always say that we were forced to start our own agency. And really, that's not, I'm glad it happened, right? But that's not really much of an understatement at all. It was like we really basically had no choice if we wanted to, to keep doing insurance. And I remember a particular member of the insurance community that I came from was very upset, and called me and said, and I said, hey, look, there's plenty of business for everybody. Like this is not a famine. It's okay. It's going to be fine. And this person said, you and I both know that's not true. Well, our agency surpassed the size of the agency that I had worked for, just focusing on contractors, in about 3 years. And that agency was something to the tune of like 35 years old. So our agency was larger in 3 years than theirs had been in 3.5 decades. So I think that alone is a power testament to the niche space. But with BTIS, we wrote a ton of business through BTIS because it was easy. It was like we'd get on there, and there's some other ones out there that are operate easy in their own space. But for us, what we found for the customers that we had, it was like, okay, not only is it fast and we can get responses back, which is hugely important to Russ. You can say this. It's important, like, because you get phone calls, I'm sure, Russ, where people are like, hey, I've been calling around and I've been waiting on quotes for 2 or 3 weeks. And then you call them back that afternoon, boom, it's done. They're a customer of yours for years, right? And that was the same experience that we had was, and our partnership with BTIS in large part allowed us to do that because they were fast and they would get back to us in seriously 5 minutes. And then, the coverage that was there was pretty good coverage, especially considering for the price. There wasn't, one of those policies where it's got 50 pages of exclusions. It was good coverage. So we appreciated that. So if anybody is, looking to get in a niche, I encourage you to do that and check out BTIS. But, kind of circling back on this here, Michael, what is the way that somebody, and then we can circle around on the panel here again. What is the way that somebody should, let's say that they're going through the process. They're like, okay, I found what I think I want to do as my niche. How do you go about setting up a ecosystem or an atmosphere for that niche to get in line to do business with you?
How do you get them?
Yeah, I mean, because for us,
or how do you decide on the niche? Is that your question?
Or how do you decide?
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of covered a little bit of the deciding, and we can dive deeper into that if you think it warrants.
I'll take a quick moment on deciding because I do think it's really important. Again, it's like it's the question. It's like start here, and then you can play the Monopoly board. So these are some of the things that I think an agent should reflect on as they cultivate their where to play strategy. Number one is you want to make sure it's a market that values the independent agency system. Typically, commercial does very strongly lean towards it. Complexity also leans towards an appreciation of the independent agency system. Keep in mind that there are other channels that are available, and each channel has its own strengths. Yep. And again, if we're going to lean towards strategic efficiency, lean towards our own strength, which is the ability to be in relationship, the ability to create value, and obviously the ability to offer choices in terms of product and carrier representation. So, one, do they value it? Now, that being said, I want to be very clear that commercial lines is not the only place to play. I've got a client who's probably for years and years is arguably the fastest growing personal lines agency in the country. But he feels he's totally a niche player, playing to, I think, what we would call the mass affluent. Mm-hmm. So that gets to the next point.
Right. So real quick on that point, the folks that we had a couple episodes back, the 3-in-1, power agency, there's 3 agencies they combined into one, and that's their whole strategy. And Michael, you and I connected on them. Is their whole strategy is, our niche is going to be educating homeowners and personal lines insurance consumers who want to be educated. And who typically wants to be educated? People with more assets to protect. People are like, what is this stuff? And so that's what they're doing, is they're building that out so that way they can be educating, and in the process, oh, you know what? I think these guys would be good to handle my insurance too.
Yes, absolutely. It's identifying a market that values the independent agency system, but then also, if we're thinking about sustaining that niche, we want to make sure that we're in a relatively safe harbor. So, I think we know that this industry is changing very fast. There are both transformative and disruptive trends that are impacting the industry, and potentially, with the massive infusion of new software technologies available to agencies, available to carriers, available to consumers. There are some parts of insurance that perhaps the independent agency system has had some ownership of that conceivably it could lose. Typically, that's going to be down market, where automation can satisfy some segment of the consumers, whether it's another 5% or another 10%. Yeah, I generally, we want to be where, a leaning up market has a lot of arguments in its favor. One is that it tends to be a safe harbor against intrusion. Another one is that the complexity tends to make the agency system more desirable. Next issue is, as Russ alluded to, you want to make sure it's a niche that's got money, whether it's substantial, like revenue per customer, or I've got some niche clients who sell remarkably small policies, but they own that niche online. They're real digital players, and so they can sell highly efficiently with very little cost per employee. So the revenue per employee is very high. So you want to make sure that the niche has enough money that your input into it, the amount of work you put into it gives multiple returns back. From a marketing point of view, you want to make sure they're reachable. So somehow you've got to be able to access them, whether it's a email marketing list or social, perhaps with LinkedIn or something like that. They've got to be reachable. You also want to be able to sustain interest. So Abe, you'd said you grew up, in an environment that made contractors a natural niche for you. So you're going to be in relationship with this niche for a long time. Like, I've been in my niche, insurance agents, for 30 years. Turns out I like them. And so it's easy for me to continue to be engaged in issues that matter in their life. And then, of course, if you're going to be successful, you've got to ask yourself, are you willing to commit to acquiring new capabilities, learning things perhaps you didn't know before, hiring people perhaps you didn't have before, training people in a way that they weren't trained in before. There's always the management of new capabilities. And ultimately, if you're really going to dominate a niche, are you willing to get to know it? It's the trends and forces that are changing it, the problems, the issues, the worries and concerns that real people have in a real niche, in such a manner that you can actually provide some thought leadership to that niche.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
So that's a kind of a short list of things to think about when you're contemplating a niche that you want to enter into. You want to enter one that you can dominate. So
Russ, along those lines, you said in our previous interview, and you touched a little bit on here, that you did a niche with the 1 hour photoshops. I don't know if you said it here or you're in the prior interview. Fire extinguishers. You were a big player in the fire extinguisher space in the state of California at one point in time. Tell me about, because the 1 hour photo, obviously the profit per relationship or the commission per relationship is really, really low. So that one's kind of, but it was kind of along those same lines with the fire extinguisher niche, right?
Yeah. Commission levels were low for contractors in California versus my hab niche, for example. It's double. Plus the revenue on premium size is more substantial when it comes to, decent apartments, et cetera. But all the principles are similar. To Michael's point, it's finding the affinity in it. One of the things that's been very key to me, two points, is the list. My 90% of my success in any niche has been the list and the maintaining and the data that's in that niche to be able to fine tune. We brought it up before, sharpening that pencil. I don't market to all 250,000 apartments. I probably market to about 80,000 of them. So it's disqualifying all of those so that you're not wasting time. But then the other thing is interviewing people in those prospects in the early days and trying to find out what's going on in their mind. What keeps them up at night? what from my perspective can I do to help with that? Everybody always says they want a better price. Well, what other things can there be? How can you differentiate yourself from the farmer's agent or the other independent that, is selling everything? How can you become more of a specialist? So when you get into the niche, whatever niche it is, you got to learn their lingo. You got to talk to them. You got to figure out, as a general rule, what are those things that are concerning, and tell stories, be able to come back and relate it to, well, if you did X, here's why we're, better than the competition. So that you're, to me, that's marketing 101 and telling those stories. But at the same time, it's getting in and disqualifying, but it's also getting in and understanding what's going on in their mind and their worries and stresses in that particular industry. And even if it was personalized, all of that.
For sure. Yeah. No, I mean, how can you help bring value to your client? And then, whether they're your client or not, right? How can you bring value to the industry? Because if you do, you get noticed.
Agree. And I'll just segue what's behind Michael's head in all those books. I know he's an author. I'm the only author insurance agent that's ever written a book on landlords. Well, that's a differentiator. That's a wedge, and when you have a prospect that calls you and either, you bring it up, you send them something, whatever, it's that reciprocity that's always there. So it's the differentiators from just the Joe Blow, Main Street agent that is trying to sell everything. No, you're a specialist. You know what you're doing in your space. Yeah. I'm sure Paul does it in his. So we all do that.
I need to write a book.
Somebody needs to a buddy of mine, Michael knows him, my buddy Mike in San Diego, did it in front of about 600 people. So in the next year, the book was done. And it's been a game changer,
It's funny. I was, one of our surety folks were at a show, and one of the surety companies contracted with the company that writes the, for dummies books. And they did 2 little versions on contract and commercial surety. And it was these paperback books, and they were fascinating. And utilizing the for dummies concept, which, many of us remember reading those books.
Yep.
And,
mine was Chicken Soup for the Soul. So very similar.
Yeah.
But the difference too is having a thick enough book that if you use Michael's background as an example, I can see Bob Dylan, but some of the paperbacks you can't read, or if it's a narrow spine, you want to be able to hopefully have enough meat, but to be able to, they're going to see it when you're looking at the bookshelf.
Well, I think it's a brilliant idea, talk about being in the niche play and having a book that explains, call it the landlord or their perspective, what you did. That's, that to me, that's one, it's guerrilla marketing. You're doing something totally different than everybody else. And you're setting yourselves apart in that niche play. And Russ, brilliant idea, writing a book. That's really exciting.
I can't take full credit. Most of them, as Michael knows, we borrow and use your idea and then tweak it to our own. So it's all
sure.
Good.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we went over how to pick out your niche. Now let's say that we've decided on what this niche is. We've kind of touched on it a little bit, so I don't know if any of us have anything to add. But you're going through and you're like, okay, what problems does this industry have, and how can I help solve them? We did some of that with contractors insurance, and I can't dive in super deep because my non-compete's not all the way up yet. But basically, that was the long and short of it is how do we solve problems that these guys face? Interviewing customers, I know, was one of the things. I guess I'll just open it up for anybody. What's another way that we can figure out, what kind of problems we can come in and help solve for these clients?
Well, I'll take a stab real quick, Abe. On the contractor side, you've got carriers that call it our, in the game, and then you have these entrants that want to get in the game. And, one of the problems, contractor, they got to find the right agent that has the right product. You alluded to, Paul's, like our policy example. We provide very fair coverage at a fair price. And it doesn't have 50 pages of exclusions. And, I think when you look in certain niches, you got a lot of in and out play by the carrier capacity. And, that creates a problem because usually the ones that come in, they go in at the lowest price. They try to buy it all.
Yep.
Then they have loss experience issues, and then they're out. And, that doesn't really help anybody. Certainly not you, the agent, certainly not the end customer. The carrier, shame on them for not maybe doing the homework on coming into, say, a tougher class of business or line of business. I refer to it as roadkill. You can drive down and you've seen a lot of the roadkill on the side of the road of, carriers that didn't make it. And, when you're a niche player, you're going to have capacity, I think, overall with those carriers that have tenure, that understand that class of business and are able to write it on a long-term basis. So, and I think that, means a lot to all of us in I call it the food chain. So, when you were selling, Abe, you could talk about carrier rating, you could talk about the length, how long the program's been around, how long you've been around, talk about the coverage, talk about the claims. And when you add that all up, they have a buying decision. Do I want to buy the Nordstrom model, or do I want to buy the Target model? And there's a segment that want both sides. But I'm a firm believer in you pay for what you get. And, usually when it costs a little bit more, there's a reason why. One of the reasons our pricing was generally a little higher than, call it, the market. We had great capacity. We had great claim service through our carrier partner or partners. And we actually provided service. You called us and we picked up our phone. And via your client calling you with that question, problem, comment, whatever, you could reach out to us, get a hold of us, and, we could respond to you. And, I think that's a really important part of the whole equation. There needs to be a plan of longevity in the niche, not just in and out, because that doesn't really help anybody.
Sure. We've got about 8 minutes. And I know that we won't do this segment justice. So maybe someday we can do a part 2, but we have about 8 minutes left, on what we've got slotted for this. So opening it up, I mean, anybody that's got advice for agents that are either, looking to get into the niche space or are in the niche space, like pitfalls, danger signs, like what are the things that you can, download into their brains right now in the 8 minutes that we've got left that will enable them to experience more success?
I'll do a quick short list. Do your homework.
Yeah.
Test it. Don't decide you're going to do a niche and buy a list or whatever without doing your homework. And then I'll use my space when I did habitational. To Michael's point, I did my backyard first, got success there, and then went wider and wider till I went statewide. I've also looked at other states, but there's not enough data and information in those other states. So do your homework and then start to get into it. And then really just almost tunnel vision, forget all the side noise that's going on, stay within your space. And then you can, once you get in it enough, what I have right now is you sub niche, and you get finer and finer in sharpening that pencil. Don't try and be everything to everybody.
I agree.
Yeah, I would say in regards to your question, how do you stay out of trouble? I'll follow up on what Russ said. When you're in the strategy phase, the blinders come off, and you want to look at all the opportunities. You want to look at the threats. You want to look at the stuff that can go wrong. Mm-hmm. You want to. Here's what you want to get to. You want to have the best niche for your agency, because every other choice is not best, right? And so, why make any choice other than the best choice? And in theory, I mean, there's going to be one or two, but the one that is best suited. So that's it. Then when you make your decisions, the beauty is you do get to put your blinders on and not get distracted by anything else, so that you can go own that niche, and everything can be dedicated to getting deeper and getting a deeper understanding of the niche itself.
Pick one. Don't try 3 or 4 at one time. Start with one. And to Michael's point, get focused on it.
It's much safer, like by a million X, to make mistakes and to screw it up in the boardroom than it is to make mistakes and screw it up in the marketplace. So you really should be thinking through these things we're talking about. How am I going to reach them? Am I going to be able to get a good list? How am I going to solve their problems? So I'll take one moment and follow up on something else. When you talked about problem solving, Russ is exactly right. How do you know what their problems are? They know what their problems are. That's it. So go find out. Ask them. There are a couple of ways to do that. I mean, one, clearly, are just face-to-face. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to take you out to lunch or whatever. The other thing is, once you begin to, like, let's say you have a little bit of traction with a niche, or maybe you've got a list, you can do like I did a one question, about once a year, I'll do a one question survey. And I'll say, because my niche is insurance agents, I'm preparing a course or I'm designing something that I think can help agencies grow. Would you share with me what your biggest problems are in regards to organic growth? And boom, I get long form answers, and they give me the copy. They give me the very words and the phrases that they use that I use when I write copy. And so they're telling me how to market to them. The other thing that I would say is, when we're talking about problems, this one's critical. Here's the story. I have a client. He was a member of my mastermind group. 4.5 years ago, he came to one workshop of mine where I taught content marketing. And then, boom, he implemented it. Since then, that niche has grown 30% per year, every year for the last 4 years. Now, what he realized was that some of their problems had nothing to do with insurance. He solved them anyway.
Yeah.
How do you grow your arborist business? Well, his lead magnet never mentions insurance until maybe you put in your email address and you download it, and it's like the last thing. The lead magnet is called something like 8 Things Every Successful Arborist Must Know. Now, he realizes he's not going to sell insurance off of that particular lead magnet, but boom, now he has a hot or a warm list. So now he's going to nurture them with weekly tips, some of which are, pre-written in advance. And those weekly tips will take somebody from the top of the funnel, which is where he was with 8 things, to the middle of the funnel where they're beginning to get to know you. And now you can talk to them about why an arborist really does need to think about some insurance issues, because you're sending a guy up a tree with a chainsaw, you think maybe. And then bottom of the funnel where they're actually evaluating, like, where am I going to get my insurance? So in the attraction phase, there are 3 elements to it: top of the funnel, middle funnel, bottom of the funnel. And then at the customer phase, there are 3 other elements to it: converting them, making the relationship deeper, and then ultimately making the relationship longer.
Yeah.
And so the problem solving thing, let them tell you what the problems are.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And we did go into depth. Excuse me, got a little allergy thing going on here. We did go into a little bit more depth on the marketing side of it in the prior interview that I did with Michael. It's back, I think April 13th was the published date on that. Paul.
Yeah.
Advice to folks getting into the niche space. We've got 2 minutes.
Well, just quick, understanding the niche you want to get in, understanding the revenue for customer, understanding the ability to reach them. I think those are all key points. There also has to be some room for some small amount of failure. I mean, it's, you're going to try your best, but you're going to learn from minor failure, not catastrophic failure, but minor failure, and turn those into opportunities. And then picking the right partner, whether it's your capacity partner, whether it's your, MBA wholesaler, InsurTech, whoever that might be. You got to have the right one that can back up as you get the flow going. So that'd be my last little bit of tidbit.
I would add to Paul's and track it. Your key is in watching what you're doing, not, I think this. You got to have hard data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, data does not lie.
Yep, track.
And data has no emotion. I mean, data is data. So all great.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, that was one of the things that we kind of talked about earlier is the relationship that we had with you guys. It was good coverage. It was fast. We were able to write the class codes of business that were coming to us. And so, yeah, I mean, and Russ, I'm sure you do the same thing with, you've got probably just a few companies that you generally speaking work with because that's where your niche is. So it creates all sorts of efficiencies everywhere. Guys, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I don't feel like we had enough time, but I mean, we could probably talk about this all day. But real quick, 10 seconds or less. Michael, how do people get a hold of you, look up your stuff?
michaeljans.com,
Good.
or if they want to email me, michael@michaeljans.com.
Russ, your book.
insurancebycastlebehindme.com and russ@insurancebycastle.com.
Okay, and what's the name of your book?
Growing Your Real Estate Empire. It's on Amazon.
Real Estate Empire, and it's on Amazon. Russ Castle. Paul, how do people get a hold of you or BTIS?
Good luck getting a hold of me. No, just kidding.
lie.
Yeah, I know. www.btisinc.com. It's got our 800 number. You just call, talk to Mary. Mary knows where I am all the time. She'll help get a hold of me. Appreciate it, Abe. Awesome session.
Yes, thank you all. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot.
Bye.